Welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. Our theme for 2025 is the future of work. Meaning is the new money. In a world shaped by rapid innovation and constant change, the pursuit of purpose and impact has never been more important. I'm Dr. John Dentico, your host, bringing over 30 years of experience in leadership, strategic thinking, and purpose-driven innovation. Here, we tackle the pressing challenges of our time, from the rise of artificial intelligence to the growing need for meaning in the workplace. Together, we'll uncover how leaders can ethically integrate AI to enhance decision-making and keep humanity at the heart of their organizations. Remember, amidst all the technological advancements, in the end, it's always about the people. This podcast is your resource for actionable tools, thought-provoking discussions, and inspiring stories. It's time to go beyond leadership development and focus on leadership impact, creating workplaces where people thrive, innovation flourishes, and meaning truly becomes the new currency. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Now, let's throttle up and dive into today's episode. Hello again, and welcome to the Throttle Up Leadership Podcast. It's me again, Dr. John Dentico. With me this morning is Heather Hansen. Heather Hansen is a trailblazer in the art of building belief and conquering doubt, helping leaders turn skeptics into believers and achieve remarkable success. Drawing on her experience as a trial attorney, psychologist, mediator, and certified hypnotist, she teaches leaders how to use stories, evidence, and energy to influence their teams, clients, and outcomes. Heather has shared her expertise on the Today Show, Dr. Oz, CNN, Fox News, and CBS, and has worked with top organizations including Harvard Business School, Google, Moet Hennessy Louis Vuitton, and the American Medical Association. She is the best-selling author of The Elegant Warrior, How to Win Life's Trials Without Losing Yourself, and Advocate to Win, 10 Tools to Ask for What You Want and Get It. With a unique ability to blend law, psychology, and communication, Heather empowers leaders to break through barriers, master advocacy, and inspire confidence in their ideas, leadership, and potential. She lives in New York with her dog, Wolf, and I am truly pleased to have her with me this morning. Good morning, Heather. How are you?
Good morning. Goodness gracious. Did I write that or did you? That is a better bio than I think I could imagine.
I'll send you a copy. There you go. How's
I
that?
will gladly take that, Dr. John.
That's it. Heather, tell me a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, and the influences that played a major role in your early development.
What a great question. I grew up in Massachusetts. We lived in Mansfield, Mass, and then Foxborough, Mass, home of the Patriots. I went to 12 years at Catholic school in that area. And that definitely was foundational in that I learned the power of belief and what you believe in, not religious so much. Of course, that was part of it, but also believing in each other, believing in yourself. And that has been a strong basis of my entire life. My mom and both of my grandmothers were very influential as well. My grandmothers both worked, and that was unusual in their generation. And specifically, my maternal grandmother was a social worker. And so learning from her the importance of interacting with people, listening to people was also very influential. I also spent summers with her. She and my grandfather had a house in Cape Cod. And so I lived there. I worked at a restaurant starting at 13 years old near where they lived and was able to have the influence of both of my grandparents when I was young.
Oh, really great. That's a great story. Yeah. I am a product of Catholic schools, led myself, grammar school, high school, and college, and actually 2 Catholic colleges, as a matter of fact. And wow. I understand in those days when the nuns ruled with an iron hand, I'm sure you know.
They sure did.
They sure did, let me tell you. And I could do a podcast on surviving Catholic school, believe me, but that's for another time and another place. But I want to ask you a couple of questions. Your expertise spans law, psychology, mediation, and even hypnosis. How do these diverse skills come together to help leaders break through doubt and influence it others effectively?
It's such a great question. My psychology degree is my undergrad degree, and I intended to use that to get into psychology. And then I was drawn to law school because I also wanted to be an actress and figured that as a trial attorney, you had the opportunity to be in front of an audience in a little bit of a different way. But it's interesting, John, because most lawyers do not have an undergrad degree in psychology. And I often encourage youngsters who come to me for advice in making themselves a success in the law to get that degree, because there's a reason we're called counselor. We really do have to counsel our clients. I defended doctors in medical malpractice cases, and the psychology of them, and nurses as well, all medical providers, the psychology of them being sued was without managing that and their beliefs in themselves and their beliefs in their ability to talk to a jury, we would never win. And so I used my psychology degree in those 25 years of defending doctors. And what I found through that experience of defending doctors was that once you teach someone how to advocate for themselves from the witness stand, they become stronger advocates outside of the courtroom. Many of the doctors that I represented would come back to me and say, my patient satisfaction scores are going up, patient compliance is improving, because they had learned these skills of how to advocate for their ideas and what they wanted. And so when I decided to step away from the law in that way, I still do a lot of trial consulting. It was to share these tools with people from all walks of life. As you mentioned in my bio, I've worked with leaders in all kinds of industries, but these things do come together. The dispute resolution piece was important because there's disputes for every leader. And the hypnosis piece is important because without addressing the subconscious mind, there's very little that we can do consciously.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had someone on the other day talking about the law of attraction, the subconscious perspective about the law of attraction, and you attract what you radiate in many respects. And I think the subconscious is so powerful. We really barely understand it. I think we understand it to a certain level, but it is so powerful and drives so many motivations. It's just an incredible thing to study. Human brain is just incredible in many respects. So I get that. Let me ask you this. In your book, Advocate to Win, you share 10 tools to ask for what you want and get it. What is the most powerful tool leaders should be using right now in this world of hyper change, aftermath of COVID, the rapid development of AI? What tools should they be looking at now?
It's like asking me to pick a favorite child, John, but I will do my best and tell you that I think that the most important one, especially right now, is perspective. The ability to see things through another person's perspective is vital for leadership. We talk a lot about empathy, and the father of that topic is Daniel Goleman. He's at Harvard, and he really separates empathy into two types of empathy. And I don't think we talk about this a lot. One is cognitive empathy, which is the kind that I like talking about, is the ability to see through another person's eyes. The other is affective empathy, which is to feel what they feel. I don't think for leaders it's always necessary or even advisable to feel what your team feels. If your team is feeling frustrated, scared, anxious, unsure, resentful, hopefully not, but you don't want to feel those feelings, but you do want to see the world from their perspective so that you can understand why they're feeling those feelings and speak to those feelings and address their questions and address their issues. And so the ability to take another's perspective and to change your own is a skill that I don't think you can succeed in leadership or in any aspect of life without it.
Yeah, I agree. I believe one of the most powerful tools in organizations is cross-training.
Yeah.
Okay. So in other words, you work in finance, and we take the 4 or 5 finance people and say, listen, for the next 3 or 4 weeks, you're going to go to work in marketing. I want you to go down to marketing. I want you to be integrated in marketing. I want you to do some marketing work. Again, walk in their shoes.
Yeah.
And to be perfectly blunt about it, my simulation that I started developing 30 years ago is based on, uses two basic drivers. One is empathy. And the way I do that in the simulation is when I set up, and there are no computers, none. There are just 30 or 40 people in a room playing different stakeholder entities. And what I do is I take people in powerful positions and put them in less powerful positions. and take people in less powerful positions and put them in powerful positions so they get a chance to walk in each other's shoes. And the other tool that I use, which is ambiguity. Ambiguity is a wonderful teacher when people don't have the answer and they have to find the answer to a realistic scenario that it normally is what drives it, a realistic scenario. So empathy and ambiguity are great ways to have people take a step back and say, well, I don't know the answer. Maybe we should work together and collaborate and see if we can find the answer. I'd love to get your reflection on that.
There's so much about that I love. Let me start with the ambiguity and then work back to the empathy piece. Ambiguity is uncertainty is one of the things that the human brain hates the most. We fight against uncertainty with everything that we have, and yet it's the only given, right? It's the only guarantee. Life is uncertain. Change is the only constant. And so becoming comfortable with that uncertainty, that ambiguity, and exploring answers without needing to be sure, certain, right is key to any leader. I think that the participants in your workshops have been very lucky because that is something that you don't hear a lot of people talk about when they talk about leaders, the importance of embracing ambiguity, learning to deal with it, learning to help the team deal with it, and to explain to the team when you are in those moments is imperative. So I love that. And I haven't heard that a lot. And I feel like I talk to a lot of leaders. So kudos to you. The other piece that we mentioned empathy, and we've talked about the two different kinds, but you said something that I think is important to underline, which is that putting people in power in positions where they may be in less power and putting people in less power in positions of power. There is an old Atlantic article, I think it's from 2017, and the title of the article is Power Causes Brain Damage. And it explores this idea, and they actually talk about fMRIs of the brain, that the part of the brain that's responsible for empathy shrinks as you become more powerful. And you get worse at doing some of the empathy exercises that they describe as you get more powerful, which of course makes sense because in the animal kingdom, we'll start there, the powerful monkeys don't need to worry about what the other monkeys think because they're the ones in power, right? So they don't need to see the world from their perspective. And so as we humans become powerful, we risk the same thing. And the more that we can do an exercise like the one that you describe, or have people around us who keep us sane and real, the better we are at working to prevent that quote unquote brain damage that occurs as we become more powerful.
I agree. We now live in a world where ambiguity is the rule of the day because it's changing so very quickly. The whole AI world is such a state of rapid development that people are trying to get tools or programs front door in their business as quickly as they possibly can. And I'm concerned about the ethical aspects of AI. How does it make a decision? What tools does it use? What has it been trained on? Has it been channeled in a small area, or is there a wide area of training that is information and knowledge that's been involved in the training? So it's very interesting to me. And I think that leaders today have to understand that there's going to be a great amount of ambiguity. And the question is that they have to embrace this. They have to say, I don't know what the answer is, but you know what? I think I've got a great group of people here, and we can find our way to the answer. We can learn our way to the answer. I'd love to get your thoughts about that.
Well, I think that when you asked what my favorite tool is, some of the others that came to mind at the top of the list was credibility. And I think that for a leader, credibility is paramount. If I used to share the 5 C's of an advocate, they are connection, compassion, creativity, curiosity, and credibility. And I always said the most important is credibility, because if they don't believe you, you can't win. In the courtroom, the jury might find me and my clients nice, interesting, kind, smart, prepared. But if for some reason they didn't believe us, we could not win. And the same is true for a leader. And a big part of credibility, and I talk about this belief triangle, but a big part of it is owning it when you don't know something, owning it when you get it wrong. And so when you said saying I don't know is a huge credibility booster. I just coached someone on this morning. She was afraid to say she didn't know. So instead, she was not doing the task that had been asked of her. And I said to her, you're losing credibility with every day that you don't do that task. If you simply said, I don't know how to do this, but I want to find out where can I, you would go up in the eyes of the people who asked you to do that thing. And so to your statement, being willing to say, I don't have the answer. I don't know what to do, but I have a team, I have resources, I have the brains and the wherewithal and the self-efficacy to figure it all out and to look into it and to explore it and to learn and to have a growth mindset. That's going to be the key, especially moving forward in the light of AI and everything else you mentioned.
Yeah, I had Dr. Michael Gerhardt on from Germany the other day on the podcast, and he made the statement about too often, and again, this old leadership, the traditional leadership ideas of, I have to have the answers. I have to know. And he talked about the difference between a leader having the bullhorn, being the loudest, and a leader who has resonance with the people in his group. And it just so impacted me when we had that conversation. I said, that's the word. That's the word I've been looking for, resonance. Do you resonate with people, especially in the world today? The big three I talk about all the time is, number one, what are people searching for in this multi-generational workforce? Number one, values alignment. They want to make sure that they're aligned with the organization. Number two is they want to be involved in the decision-making processes of the organization. They want to matter. Everybody wants to matter.
That's right.
Everybody wants to have impact. Everybody wants to know that they're doing something that's meaningful. Meaning, the greatest motivation factor on the planet, as far as I'm concerned. And the third one is they want training and learning that enhances their future and their future development. And I think we have to understand that this world we live in, where no one person can keep up with the level of change, that you do need a team.
Yeah.
My leadership model that I started developing 30 years ago has one basic premise: contribution. That's it. Contribution. Open the door. Okay. Anybody got any ideas? We have a problem. We have an issue.
Yeah.
Anybody want to throw something on the table? We're all good here. Let's go. So I think this change is happening. And I think in many respects, they're hanging on to this. The leaders, the traditional leaders, hanging on with a grip, with a death grip, if you will, to these old ideas. And yet they're being just pulled right out of their hands. I'd love to get your ideas on that.
No, I think that you're so right. And I saw it in the courtroom all the time. This is control. I know how to control things. In my world, I have control. And the idea of ceding control, especially for leaders, and especially for leaders who have been leading for a period of time, the thought of ceding any control is enormously scary and uncertain. And yet it has got to be considered. And it doesn't mean giving up control. It means sharing it in the right circumstances. And I think that your point about opening the door and getting contribution, it's all about asking questions of yourself first. I talk a lot about knowing your jury. And by jury, I mean the people whose choices give you your wins. So for a leader, the jury is the team, the jury is the board, the jury is your leaders. But the first jury and the most important jury, and the jury that we don't talk about enough, is the inner jury. The part of you that chooses, and those choices give you your wins. It's not, when I say that a lot of times, John, people think I mean the part of you that is judgmental or that judges. It is not. A jury's job is to listen and to choose what to believe. And there is a part of you that's listening to all the chatter in your brain. Ethan Kross's book, Chatter, is great on this topic. And deciding what to believe. That is your inner jury. And you've got to ask that part of you questions too. Why are you afraid? What is the story that you're telling yourself about this? Does that story hurt? Is there a story that feels better? Is there a story that serves this team better? And really getting in there and asking for contribution of your outer jury, your team, but also of other parts of you that have stories that may serve you better.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And it goes back to the point you made earlier, and that's about credibility and the stuff that drives every engine in every organization. It's trust.
Yeah.
Trust is universal. And even in AI systems, there is this whole perspective that you lose trust. For whatever reason, in your AI system, people are just going to walk away. It'll be instantaneous. Wait a minute, we can't trust that system to tell us anything of measure, anything of truth. And so our job, let's look for something different, because this is not giving us what we want. So very, very, very important. Let me ask you this question. Building belief is essential in leadership, sales, and relationships. What's the biggest mistake people make when trying to persuade others?
Well, I think that we've sort of touched upon it. It is doing it from our own perspective. It is, see, if we think that this is the winning argument, the winning piece of evidence, the winning story. But if you don't understand your jury, you're not going to have the winning piece of evidence, the winning story. And so you've got to really, we have a benefit outside of the courtroom that I don't have in the courtroom. In the courtroom, I don't get to turn to the jury and say, what am I missing? Do you get it? Am I on the right track? What don't you understand? I've got to hope that they're seeing the world I do. In my keynotes, I often show that picture. You remember that picture of the dress that was so popular on the internet for a while? Some people saw it as white and gold, and some people saw it as black and blue. It's a picture of a dress that a woman took, she was going to wear to a wedding. And it blew up the internet because some people would have sworn on their lives that this dress was white and gold. And others would swear on their lives that this dress was black and blue. And it was a big fight. And I've gone down the rabbit hole of this dress. It turns out that it has to do with the cones and the rods in your eyes. But some people truly see white and gold, and some people truly see black and blue. The dress is actually black and blue.
Interesting.
The frustration I have as a trial attorney is I don't get to say, do you see white and gold or do you see black and blue? What am I getting wrong here? But we have that opportunity outside of the courtroom. And so when you are working to build belief in your team, in your board, in your spouse, in your children, the first thing that you want to consider is how do they see the world? How do they see this problem? Where is their pain inherent in this issue that your solution that works for you also alleviates their pain? Then you've got a winning argument that you can advocate for. But until then, you are just swimming in your own stuff and you're missing what's actually going to win the day.
And we take that another step forward. Understanding their pain is absolutely essential. No question about it. And I think that's the way people market today. Marketing today is about, I'll hold myself up for critique. I used to have a website that said, this is John Dentico and this is what he does. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
But you have to come at it and say, here's the issues and the problems. And this is how I can help you solve those problems. But there's more to it than that. And I think this is sometimes not as well understood. I've seen the best way to solve the problem is to get the people who have the problem involved in solving their own problem.
Yes.
So in a sense, you say, well, wait a minute. You say this is an issue. Let's use the most powerful force on earth to see if we can figure this out. What is the most powerful force on earth? Imagination. Who told us that? Albert Einstein. When Einstein was asked, how did you come up with the theory of relativity? He said, when I was 16, I imagined myself traveling through the universe, riding on a moonbeam. I've tried that. I can't do it. That's imagination.
Yeah.
So many times what we don't do is we don't engage. I'm sure you've seen this many times. The imagination of the people who really can solve the problem.
That's right.
You can say, well, how would you solve it? If you could do anything, how would you solve it? And maybe there's a shot here and a shot there, and you go, well, let's see if we can corral that in. Now you bring in the collaborative piece. Now you bring in the empathy piece, and you say, okay, let's see if we can flesh this out a bit. Let's see if we can find a way. And once people become vested in the outcome of solving their own issue, it's an incredible, powerful force. I'd love to hear your words on that.
Yeah, I think that you're totally right. First part of it, where you get people solving the problem, place that I've seen this work really well is in healthcare. People with diseases, especially rare diseases, have great ideas about how to address those diseases. And I often struggle with this because medicine tends to be and has been very patriarchal, where the doctor is the boss and tells the patient what to do. And there's got to be that partnership because the patients often have the answers that the providers are looking for if they're just willing to listen. But it's across the board. It is the customers often have the answers. And one of the things that I love to do is just look at reviews, because the reviews will often have the answer to the problem that is inherent in the product. And so if companies were to look at those reviews more often, they would certainly be able to innovate in a more effective way. And to your point, at the last point, that people feel more value when they've contributed. There's great research on this. They call it the IKEA effect because we put together our own IKEA furniture. And when you've put something together yourself, you tend to value it more highly. In the research, they actually had people either create origami or just have origami and then sell it. And the origami that they had created, which may not have been the best origami, they priced at a higher price point because they had contributed to it. So as a leader, you want to tap into that. Have your team contribute to the innovation, the solution, the change that you want to make. Change is such a big part of what I help teams with. And when they have, they become your strongest advocates. And that is so important. When you can turn your team members into your advocates, everything changes.
For me, it's about connecting imagination with meaning. It's about connecting it. If you can, people derive a sense of meaning from being totally involved in what they're doing. And if you can get them to make that connection point, boy, you just really release a tremendous amount of power. Let me move on, if I can, to another question. You've appeared on major media outlets like CNN and Fox News. How has your experience as a media personality at all shaped your approach to leadership and influence?
Oh, I'm rarely asked this question, and it has done so in an enormous way, in a number of enormous ways. One of the things that it's done is I have done MSNBC and I have done Fox News. They are very different channels with different biases, and there are biases on both sides. And the people in both makeup rooms, behind the scenes, on the scenes, in front of the camera, across the board, with some exceptions, of course, are lovely, kind, well-meaning beings who really believe that what they're talking about is for the best for them, their families, the people that they serve on both sides. And if you can believe that, I remember hearing an interview from President Obama early in his presidency, and he was talking about death of this. That it used to be in politics, as much as people thought, they truly believed that the other side wanted what was best for the country. And there's been this shift where people truly believe the other side want to destroy us. And I think that as long as we believe that, it's going to be very difficult to find a middle ground. And so that has taught me a lot. And the other thing that's a little less deep is it taught me to be even more efficient at getting to my point. It taught me how long 3 minutes is. Because a lot of times that's all you get to be able to make your point. And I realized that I could make a point in 3 minutes. And as a trial attorney, attorneys like to hear themselves talk. And so it made me a much more brevity-focused trial attorney, which juries really appreciated.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I talk about brevity and the communication in brevity, I've always hearkened back to, I believe this is correct, Thomas Jefferson. Jefferson wrote a letter to his friend and he said, "I had not the time to write a shorter letter." And brevity is so important. It's got to be very specific, very pointed, get to the point without all this. And of course, in the social media of the world today, we're just inundated with a plethora of information that just keeps coming as fast and as furious as we can imagine. And in marketing, many times they're encouraging you to send more, do more, put more out there. And the answer is maybe we should turn to quality. Quality, it matters now. And I think people who have become so inculcated, if you will, with the use of the internet today, they'll figure it out. The people have become pretty good researchers and they'll sift through the stuff that needs to be sifted through for them to get to the point, whether that's on politics or whether it's on healthcare. There's so many now healthcare people, for example, on YouTube, representing so many different perspectives. I'm sure you've seen it.
Yeah.
It's just like, you just sit there and go, how can you get through this stuff? Mind-boggling. Anyway, we're getting close to the end here. So I'd like to ask you what I refer to as my world famous question. And that is, if you had a magic wand and you could change anything in the world that you see, in the work world that you work in, whatever, what would that issue be? And why did you choose that?
It all comes down for me to the power of belief, because we mentioned trust a little bit earlier, and belief is the foundation of trust. The root of the word trust is strong, and strength takes time. The root of the word belief is love. And I think that if we start to understand that nothing happens until someone believes, a team does not embrace change until they believe the change is good for them. A leader does not embrace uncertainty until they believe that uncertainty is the only constant. But when you believe, in fact, it's funny because sitting here on my desk is a book I just read called Shift, Managing Your Emotions So They Don't Manage You by Ethan Kross. And he talks about the fact that we can change our emotions, but only if we believe we can. And so it really is belief is everything. And if you don't believe that something's possible, it's never going to be possible for you. But if you believe that something is possible, you are on the way to achieving it. And I think that so many people just believe that things aren't possible when that is just not true. And if they told themselves a different story, the world could be a different place.
Interesting. When you talk about emotions, perspective is this. Your emotions are your emotions. They're real. What you feel is what is real. The question is not controlling emotions as much as how do you respond to those emotions. You can be very angry and throw stuff through the window and do all kinds of crazy things, or you can channel that into, okay, how am I going to respond to this? What am I going to do with this? It's the old adage of you get knocked down 10 times, get up 11, that kind of a thing. So in that respect, I think people have a different, I think I'm going to control my emotions. No, feel it.
Yeah.
Understand it, be with it, and then make the decision, where do I go from here? What am I going to do next? I'd love to get your response to that.
I mean, it's very consistent with what Ethan Kross talks about in this book. One of my favorite parts is that we can't control the trigger, that thing that sets us off, but we can control the trajectory, where that emotion goes. And the example that he gives is such a good one because I talk a lot about this in my work. And especially when I'm preparing witnesses for trial, it's a big part of, I'm a trial consultant is one of my many hats. And it's a very emotional thing. And the trigger of an attorney saying something that upsets you or that challenges you is going to be there. But do you let that emotion go? And he gives the example of an itch. The trigger is the itch and the response is often to scratch it. But the more you scratch, the more it itches. And so the trajectory of that itch can be controlled if you have the control to not scratch it. And it's very similar to what you just said. You get angry. Yeah, something happened, made you angry. Where's that anger going to go? Are you going to scratch it so that it continues to fester and continues to itch and itches even more? And then you start bleeding and we go down that road? Or are you going to distract yourself? Are you going to do self-talk? Are you going to listen to music? He gives you a lot of tools to control that trajectory, but it is all about the trajectory.
Yeah, I agree. I think you have to exercise control or things can get out of hand. You can find yourself in a much more difficult if you have a violent reaction to things. It's just, where am I going to take this? What am I going to do with this? How can I use it as a power as opposed to a detriment? So I absolutely agree with you. I have to tell you, Heather, this has been a delight. I really appreciate your time this morning here to be on the podcast with me. I truly enjoyed our conversation. And I want to wish you every success in the future, every success in life, and Wolf, good health to you too. And Wolf, enjoyed your time together. Anyway, I appreciate it so much. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much for having me, John.